Another day on the Sea of Thieves was upon Captain Fireheart and her crew, and for this adventure, she and one of her crew members known as Indigo Seawater were on their way to a dangerous fortress called the Traitor's Fate Fortress. But this time, the two pirates were driving Indigo's ship called the Aquatic Star. They were also flying a flag representing an emissary alliance to the Order of Souls. Fireheart learned from her days of being captain that if you raise an emissary flag, they'll be able to get much more gold if they sell specific items to that faction they were representing. But they had to be careful with any other ships that might want to cause trouble. The fortress was infested with evil ghost pirates called Phantoms who would protect it at all costs. However, Captain Fireheart knew that this would be an easy voyage, because while her crew members were busy with other things, she took on a few fortresses on her own, so she knew exactly what to do. As for Indigo, he only accompanied Fireheart in handling a fortress once, but after learning from Fireheart on his first fortress battle, he also knew what to do. They were only about a mile from the fortress when they heard bells chiming and the cannons suddenly started firing. Fireheart did her best to avoid the cannons, but the ship came in a bit too fast when they dropped the anchor and ended up crashing into some of the rocks and took a bit of damage. But luckily, Indigo managed to repair the holes in the ship and kept it from sinking. Luckily, the ship was now out of reach from the cannons. They both climbed the ladder and they were soon inside the fortress. The evil ghost pirates came in from all sides. Phantoms of the fortress, Captain Fireheart and Indigo Seawater battled through each one of the phantoms, taking them all out, one by one. Eventually, the ghost captain arrived, and with one last slice of her cutlass, Fireheart delivered the final blow. The phantom captain dropped a special key, the one to open the treasury room that was filled with loot. As Fireheart grabbed the loot, Indigo quickly went outside to bring the ship over so they could swiftly bring the goods back to the ship. And for the two pirates, having the loot brought to their ship was a very satisfying feeling. While Indigo was bringing the loot back to the ship, Fireheart decided to explore the fortress for any more hidden goodies. Eventually, she found another key for a smaller room at the top of the fortress that held some more treasure. By the time all of the treasure was on the ship, Fireheart and Indigo knew they had to get to the nearest outpost to sell their loot quickly. They didn't have anyone else trying to steal their loot, so they raised the anchor, got the ship turned around, and they were soon on their way. They eventually got a chance to sell their loot at Galleon's Cave outpost and ended up with over 27,000 gold. While Fireheart and Indigo were resting on their ship for a few minutes before setting off on another voyage, Fireheart saw a red glowing skull cloud up in the sky, and she knew it meant one thing: another skeleton lord was approaching. And after some talking with Indigo, they both agreed to head out and take down the skeleton lord. The skeleton lord was on a small island called Sharkfin Camp, and the cannons were already firing at their ship by the time they arrived. Skeletons were everywhere, almost taking out the two pirates many times. Some of those skeletons were even carrying barrels filled with gunpowder, which would explode at a single bullet shot. Luckily, Fireheart and Indigo were able to use the gunpowder barrels to their advantage in taking out multiple skeletons at once, until eventually the skeleton lord finally emerged from the shadows, and to Fireheart's surprise, it was Warden Shi, the one skeleton lord that she took down days ago, and now was back from revenge. But luckily, Fireheart knew how to take down the skeleton, and the last time she took it down. As for Indigo, it was his first time taking down one of these. But all of a sudden, Fireheart saw an upcoming ship arriving on the island to try and steal the loot from the two pirates. But thankfully, Fireheart was able to get a few hits on the enemy ship, enough for it to head out with the pirates having their tails between their legs. After a few more minutes of battling later, the Skeleton Lord finally went down, dropping the key to the treasure vault, and with all of the loot inside the vault were 2 special chests called the Chest of Fortune and the Chest of Legends. While Indigo brought the loot outside, Fireheart went back to the ship to get ready to grab the loot onto the ship. But they had to be quick because a storm was brewing at the fortress, and they both had the fear that the enemy ship might return to steal their loot. So they had to get all of the treasure onto their ship and book it out of there as soon as possible.
Besides, we need someone to check.
And I got struck by lightning again. Damn it.
Oh boy.
Ah! Sorry. Oh!
Oh!
Not again.
It struck both of us! That's a Looney Tunes cartoon right there.
Not again.
Are you okay?
I don't think so, because I got struck 3 times now.
By the time they got all of the loot back to the ship, the rain stopped, and they got the ship turned around and were able to get to another outpost known as Daggertooth Outpost. Captain Fireheart and Indigo Seawater were proud of themselves, since their gold amount not only doubled, but perhaps quadrupled how much they received with over 140,000 gold. The 2 pirates were indeed satisfied with their journey on that day, and they wondered what their next voyage would bring.